What is up, you guys? Teller checking in for Dana White's Contender Series Week 2. Now, I know Week 1 was a struggle. It was seriously a struggle. I promise you guys we will clean things up here for Week 2. But understand and remember, we talked about the fact that when it comes to Dana White's Contender Series, it can be tough at times with limited tape on some of these fighters. And there's a lot of moving parts with these fighters as they step into the cage looking to get signed by the UFC. A lot of these fighters evolve rapidly. A lot of them are young, and you see major growth in their game as they go from their last fight right up into the opportunity they get on Tuesday night. So expect more of that throughout the season. I caution you guys to target these big favorites on these cards. You guys saw it in the main event last week. And again, just be careful. Okay, we definitely have seen that trend throughout this show. So this is a very fun card. I got my boy kicking the card off. Pampos Gregorio, also known as Charalampos Gregorio, the Greek Cypriot, who is taking on Cameron Smotherman. I just talked with Gregorio the other day. He is very, very excited for this opportunity. And I won't go too much into it. I'm not going to pull out the history books here, but understand that the situation that he's in, kicking this card off and essentially competing against two other Turkish MMA fighters for a contract into the UFC does spice things up a little bit as well. I don't know the history between Greece and Cyprus, versus Turkey, and the lengthy history that we have with the Ottoman Empire, the Greek and Armenian genocide that happened years ago. It does kind of excite things for Gregorio. Trust me there. And again, I won't go too much into that. If you guys want to pull up a history book or look online, you guys can learn a little bit of that. Because some of you guys that are listening to this, you guys have your own ancestry and your own lineage that has issues or conflicts and genocides or wars with certain other cultures and countries. Trust me, you don't really realize, but a lot of people around you have their own history, their own family history. A lot of people go through that. It's a part of human nature and history. So some of them are a lot worse than you would think if you never cracked open a book. We're talking about some serious stuff. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't killing of the man, snatching of the woman, the raping, all that type of stuff, man. The Armenians really went through that too. So just understand there's a little bit of some excitement coming from Gregorio with this spot to kick off the card, and he wants to get this contract. Not only does he want to win it, and not only does he want to win this fight and get a contract, he wants to be the standout fighter on this card. All right. So, and he's coming in as an underdog. So let you guys know that now. So very excited for this card. If you guys can, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, catch me on all my social media. It's scrolling below. I won't hold you guys up anymore. We're going to jump into the first fight. My boy, Pampos Gregorio, taking on Cameron Smotherman.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
All right, kicking things off, we're headed over to the bantamweight division where we have Smotherman, the former Cage Fury bantamweight champion, taking on Gregorio, the former Combat FC, CFC bantamweight champion. So two regional scene champions here. I really like this matchup for my boy Gregorio here. And I don't say that in the sense that it's an easy matchup. I think this is a stiff test for him. And I know that that's exactly what he would want. Smotherman has some solid boxing skills. In his last fight, he had a devastating knockout over Peter Caballaro. He had a nasty knockout shot on the feet. He set it up beautifully. So he does have some solid boxing skills. He surrounds himself with high-level talent. Obviously, you see him over there hanging with Rufian Stotts, the former Bellator champion. And, we don't have an age on the babyface killer here. We talked about how sometimes we're missing some of these things when we're diving into these fighters, but I do believe that he is relatively young here, while Gregorio is 31 years old, right into the prime of his career here, at least age-wise. Still needs to get more experience as a pro, just 10 pro fights, but he's really coming into this fight with some momentum right now. I know his confidence is at an all-time high. He just won the Combat FC championship in his last fight, where he stopped his opponent Chris Disonel in the 5th round via leg kicks. He absolutely was butchering his legs apart. He has really heavy leg kicks, throws that calf kick very nice. And also understand, coming off a knockout win before that as well. And then he's on a 3-fight winning streak. He lost a grappling match, don't mind that. And then you take a look at his last 2 losses. respectable talent, right? Christian Rodriguez, you guys know C-Rod, a very talented fighter, a very young, talented fighter. Josh Smith is a name that we've seen around the game. He's not a bad fighter. A couple of victories early on, and then there's one questionable loss where he lost to a fighter that was 0-3 at the time. That's definitely a little bit of a red flag early on. It was back in 2017, 6 years ago. I do know that he's been cleaning some things up. Cameron Smotherman, on the other hand, he's 8-3. He's on a 4-fight winning streak. He's really been putting in work as of recently. But he went to a split decision with Casey Jones just 3 fights ago. 3 losses as of recently. And understand that even though these fights seem like they're early on in his career, these were just back in the end of 2021. So these weren't that long ago. They weren't as long ago as some of the losses that we saw Gregorio take. And they are questionable losses, if you ask me. 2 of those losses were against guys making their pro debuts. Shane Torres was 3-1 at the time. So you kind of take note of that. But I do believe that Smotherman has been cleaning things up. I think that he's learning the game as he goes. And he does have some talent. He has good boxing skills. He's lengthy. And I think that he's going to be a tough test for Gregorio, especially with his boxing skills. Gregorio needs to be sharp with his head movement and his defense, or I do believe that he can potentially be tagged up there. But I like the overall striking game of Pampos here. I think that he'll mix in the kicks a lot better. I know that Gregorio has worked on his takedown defense and his grappling very much so. And understand that Pampos has been putting in a lot of work over at Team Serra Longo. Okay, so he's been training over there with all those killers, and you guys know that's one of the best gyms you could surround yourself in, or to be just involved in right now. He surrounds himself with some high level talent, and pull some of that up here. I mean, you saw Dennis Bazooka. He just made his UFC debut, I believe, came off Dana White's Contender Series. So training with fighters that have gone through this. Nazim Sadyakov. I know he trains with Nazim Sadyakov, who just finished Terrence McKinney. And he also looks to be in the best shape of his career. If you look up the physique that he has going into this fight, he looks much, much more ripped than he's ever looked before. So I do believe you're going to see the best version of him. There's just no question about it. And he is a nasty striker. And you know what? I mean, listen, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Am I a little bit biased with my pick here? I have to be, right? But at the same time, I think that this fight can easily go either way. This is a fight that's going to be very closely matched. And right now, Gregorio is he opened as a plus 241 underdog, which is ridiculous. If you could have grabbed the value there on Bet Online, that is ridiculous. There's no way he's a plus 241 in this spot here, if you ask me. He's currently a plus 145, as you see the line moving around, which you see that the line is trending towards his way, which is obviously something you want to see, right? It's always great to see the line trending towards a certain fighter. There's definitely stats that point towards when you see line movement going towards one way extensively, that a lot of those fighters tend to show up. The sharps are doing the research and whatnot. And I think that this fight should be at least a pick'em. So I think there's still value on that plus 145 line. There's so many question marks. Watch the nasty leg kicks of Gregorio here. And just remember, he's coming in the best shape that he's ever been. He's been putting in serious work with UFC caliber fighters and training with some of the best coaches in the game. He's well-rounded. He's been refining his overall game. And I'm taking my brother here, the Greek Cypriot, Pampos Gregorio, to get the job done. And we'll see how Smotherman looks. Over to the light heavyweight division, where we have Paulo Honato Jr., a Dana White's Contender Series veteran, taking on the newcomer here, an Ibo Aslan, the last Ottoman, who is a big light heavyweight fighter, or at least he's much bigger than Paulo Honato Jr. I'll tell you that much. As you see the two men square off over here, Paulo Honato Jr., I believe he's fought in the heavyweight division, in the light heavyweight division, and he's a fighter that should possibly be fighting in the middleweight division, if you ask me. Not that he looks lean here and whatnot, but he's only 6 foot. He's a little undersized. This is a guy in Paulo Honato who has kickboxing experience, but he's also a fighter that we just saw get outpointed and essentially picked apart by Jamal Pogies, who hasn't been looking that good as of recently. At least he's coming off a very tough loss, and Pogies went in there and kind of controlled that fight. That was the fight that took place in Dana White's Contender Series. So since then, Paulo Honato Jr. goes out, gets a couple victories in a row, including a kickboxing match where he had a first-round knockout and then 2 first-round knockouts over in MMA, but against fighters that had a 20-25 record and a 6-5 pro record. So not really crazy, but the level of competition. And if you take a look at the level of competition even early on, it's very bad. Guys making their debuts, guys that are 6-10, 2-2, making their debuts, 6-14. It's bad as far as the level of competition goes. On the other hand, Ibo Aslan, he's 11-1. In his one loss that he had, he was submitted via rear naked choke. That was a fight that he was winning against a UFC veteran and Dana White's Contender Series veteran Anton Turkaj, and he made a mistake through a sloppy strike. He kind of lost his balance and he got his back taken and was submitted. But again, he was controlling that fight and he was actually looking pretty good early on. And since then, 3 victories in a row. But again, against lower level competition fighters, there's no question about it. I mean, look at the records of these fighters that he's going out there and beating: 18-21, 6-7, 5-9. So again, remember how we talked about being a little cautious, with these lines and being a little bit careful how we're analyzing these lines, which we'll jump over to in a second. I am going to be picking Ibo Aslan to win this fight. I think that the physicality, the aggressiveness is a little bit more than what a guy like Honato Jr. brings to the table, at least from what we're seeing going into this fight on tape. And if Ibo Aslan can just keep it together here and not make any stupid mistakes in there, I think that this is his fight to win. And real quick, let me also pull up, out of his 11 wins, 100% of those wins via knockout. Okay, this is a guy that goes out there and looks to knock his opponents out. All right, he's a finisher. So we'll see if that finish comes. Once again, he does carry some power. Also, as far as the grappling goes, I don't think he's that polished with his jiu-jitsu, but he is physical. I've seen him in the clinch. I've seen him rip some opponents down, kind of throw his opponents down to the mat. I think he's very physically strong. The main thing you need to watch out with him is his cardio and conditioning. All right, his conditioning is what let him down when he lost to Turkaj as well. So understand, if he slows down, Honato Jr. might take this fight over. But I will be siding with Ibo Aslan. And, right now, so he opened up as a -175. He was at one point in time, let's see here, he was right around a pick'em actually, but did dip for a very brief second towards underdog odds. At one point in time, he was a +105. He is now a -120, which is essentially a pick'em with a very slight lean his way. And I think that that's a much more accurate line than a -175 line next to his name, right? So if you jumped on this early, or if you see this line start to trend back that way, if you see him to become a big favorite, I would caution you. I think that there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of variables with this fight. Honato has been here before, and maybe the cardio of Honato comes through for him. So be careful. But as far as the tools go early on, Ibo Aslan is more dangerous, in my opinion, and more promising of a fight. He's larger, more physical. I will take him to get the job done here. Maybe he gets that knockout. You guys know the story of this show. We want to see action. Dana White's there. He's watching. These fighters are going to bring it. Maybe Ibo gets another finish here. I mean, that's all he does when he wins. So, and he landed some big shots on Anton Turkaj early in that as well. Maybe that knockout comes through. Over to the featherweight division, we have the undefeated Haider Amil taking on Emrah Sunmez, Anatolian Wolf. Emrah Sunmez is a large fighter for the division. He does have a size advantage. If you guys seen them square off already at the weigh-ins, Sunmez will have that size advantage, and he's a fighter that really relies on his wrestling and grappling. So that could be a little bit of an issue for Amil, but Haider Amil has shown to have worked on his overall skill set. We know that he's been getting a lot of work in with Gilbert Melendez, fighters from that crew over there. Chrome Gracie, he's been working on his jiu-jitsu with Chrome Gracie, and he's been showing some evolution in his game. But I do believe that he's more of a brawler. He's a brawling type of fighter. He really wants to get this fight back up to the feet if he's down there, or he wants to keep this fight standing and he wants to land some big shots. And if you break down tape on him, he's put on some exciting performances where he's finished some fighters in that type of fashion. Like we said, he's undefeated. He's 7-0, 33 years old. He's not a spring chicken. 4 knockouts out of all those wins there, and coming off a second round knockout over Chase Gibson over an LFA. And he's already fought on a decent scene, right? He's had multiple fights over in Bellator and LFA. Those are respectable promotions, right? So the lights have been on him, and he's went out there and got the job done every time. Had a split decision victory over Devontae Sewell in his second last fight there. Finished up Robson Jr. in the second round. Also has a rear naked choke victory over Paradise Viavosa. And again, just showing a little bit of diversity in his attack. But the way I see this fight going down, man, I think that Emrah is going to try to smother him and try to get this fight down to the mat and use his grappling and his size advantage. And I think that Haider is going to try to keep this fight standing, and I think he'll have enough success to have his moments where he'll land some big shots on Sunmez. So I am leaning towards a mill to get the job done here. I think that he uses his boxing, throws some heavy hooks and lands, and maybe we see a knockout. Maybe we see Sunmez kind of gassing out. This is a fighter that you also want to keep an eye on as far as his cardio goes. Emra Sunmez has shown a little bit of issues with his gas tank and his cardio. If he's forcing those takedowns and not having success, that could be a problem, and you could start to see Emil really start to tee off on him there. So that's kind of how I see the fight going down. But if Hyder struggles with the wrestling and grappling, it could be a tough time for him. But I will say that he does enough there to get the job done. Now, he opened as a minus 250 favorite, another very high line. If you're taking that kind of line on him, I think that's I just don't know what you see from what we're able to pull up that he's worthy of a minus 250 betting line. He's now a minus 185, which is much more reasonable. I would even argue he should really be around that minus 155 line. We'll see how this fight plays out. I'll say Hyder can stuff the takedowns, keep this fight standing, and put on a show with his brawling type of style. Maybe he gets that second or third round finish here on the show. That'd be fun to see. Should be a good one. Over to the strawweight division. Talking some women's mixed martial arts here. Two Brazilians, Eduarda Mora taking on Aunt Janene Silva. Silva very much undersized here. If you saw them square off at the weigh-ins, and Tapology is correct from what I saw. I mean, she's 5'1". She's very short, very muscular, very tough. I shouldn't say very muscular, actually. Let me retract that a little bit. She is somewhat muscular, but actually looked little like she's carrying a little bit of meat on her for that 5'1" frame, if you ask me. On the other hand, Mora actually more muscular, more ripped, and she's larger. And I think that size could definitely play a factor here. Both fighters undefeated. Silva, as I mentioned, very aggressive from the very limited tape I could pull up. I mean, she throws a lot of overhand rights. She looks to headhunt. And, listen, it was really hard to get a lot of information on these fighters, a lot of tape on them. Silva did just fight over in LFA in her last fight and had a victory there against Naira Hemeli. Had a decision victory there. Eduarda Mora fighting in demo fight and Thunder fights and whatnot. She's going out there getting finishes. And by the way, she looks nothing like that. I don't know if that's photoshopped or what. If you see that picture there, because you saw her at the weigh-ins, she looked a little different, if you ask me. Excuse me, the name slipped in my mind, but she almost looked a little bit reminiscent to what's her name? Gabby Garcia. I think I'm thinking of that huge fighter. She don't look like this. I don't know what's going on there, but she is ripped up too. Take a look at the victories that she's had. 3 knockouts, 4 submissions, 1 decision. She is a fight finisher. Rear naked chokes mixed in with a knockout in her last fight. I think that the size advantage is going to play a factor in this fight. I think that Silva is going to be headhunting and looking to have some early success, but I kind of worry for Silva's sake that, just not even that her gas tank's that bad, but just the size will wear on her a little bit, and some of those ugly exchanges when they're hanging on each other, and maybe we see Mora fall on top of her. I'm siding with Mora here, and I'm going to say, again, with the limited amount of tape I can get on these fighters, I think that size advantage is going to play a factor. A couple more pro fights under her belt as well. Both these fighters similar in some fashions, but the big difference I see is the size advantage there. A couple more fights for Mora, and I'll lean her way based off that. Again, this isn't a fight that I'm really going to tell you, man, that we have an extreme amount of evidence and tape to go off of, and this is what we're seeing here. I want to be very clear with you guys. This is a little bit of a tricky fight. Give me Mora, though. She opened up as a minus 201. That line trends back to a minus 140, and I think it's starting to come back the other way for a reason. I think that I think it has to do with that size advantage that she has, and I will side with her here. Of course, I would much rather like that minus 155 type of line. So keep an eye. That line could be moving around like crazy leading up to the fight tomorrow night. I don't think that many people really have an accurate read on this fight, so I don't want to sit here and act like I do. But give me Mora, get the job done. Maybe a late submission, second, third round type of submission as she wears on Silva, and Silva starts breathing heavy, holding all that size, and she has a lot of muscle too, or some muscle, and she's kind of short and stocky. See how she looks. I don't think that those sloppy overhands are going to land on Mora and cause too much. We'll see, though. Maybe she has early success with the boxing. Keep an eye on that. As far as Silva goes, maybe she could land the mark early on with those heavy hooks, those wild hooks. I wouldn't bank on that. All right, the headliner of the card, we got Abdul Karim Al-Selwady taking on George Hardwick. George Hardwick, the current Cage Warriors lightweight champion. He's 12-1. He's looked very good. Al-Selwady is a fun fighter to watch as well. He's a wild fighter, especially early on in his career. He's a fighter that really headhunted a lot. Goes out there, looks to finish his opponent. Sometimes he's the guy that's getting finished. He'll go out on his shield. Defensively flawed a little bit. He can be sloppy. I think that's a little bit of an issue against a guy like George Hardwick, who has some crisp boxing. I've been very pleased with the tape I was breaking down on George Hardwick. He's very, very calm and composed. All right, this isn't a guy that rushes anything. He's in there. He's a sniper, man. He's sitting down. He's analyzing the defensive tactics of his opponent, and he's just eating them alive, working the body, setting up his hands up top as well. I like what I've seen from this kid. Seems to be a well-rounded fighter as well. Now, when it comes to his opponent, Al-Selwady, he's more of a brawling type of fighter, I would say, especially early on in his career. I didn't really see too much grappling and wrestling from him. But as of recently, it seems like he's been sharpening up his grappling. Now, the only problem I have with that, though, is the level of competition that he's doing that against. Not extremely high-level competition, finishing Chris Pissarro, who's a 14-11 fighter there. He used some ground skills there. The 6-2 Jake Sebastian, Nick Copton, 12-9, used some grappling in that fight as well. He's been fighting over at Fury FC as well. But take a look at the losses here. Got knocked out by Dumor Roa. He got hit with a knee in the first round. Got hit with a spinning back elbow by Luan Santiago in the first round. Even early on, got knocked out in the first round against Aziz Julia Dion. So, I mean, he's been knocked out 3 times in his career, okay? So just understand that, all in the first round. I think that George Hardwick is very, very live to get that first round knockout. But just understand that Abdul, training at a Fortis MMA, I know he's been sharpening up his skill set. Maybe we haven't seen enough from George Hardwick's grappling. That's a possibility. Fighting out of the UK, I mean, how is his wrestling? I would argue that from the limited tape that I pulled up on him, he seems pretty composed with the grappling. Takedown defense seems pretty good. The guys that have shot in him, he's made them pay with those shots, and I could see something similar happening there. And if Abdul wants to go that route, I think he'll just tire himself out, and this will be finished eventually by gassing out a little bit, using that energy, and Hardwick will pick his shots. So you got the Palestinian Abdul Karim Al-Selwady. I'm going to say he takes an L here. And again, just remember we were talking earlier about the different rivalries. Imagine if Abdul, we saw this actually on Dana White's Contender Series, where we saw some Palestinians facing off against some Israeli fighters, and you saw some controversy at the weigh-ins. That's what I was talking about a little bit earlier. And I think that the sport needs more of that. I think it's fun to see different rival countries face each other in the cage. I like that. And the fight I'm thinking of there too is name slip in my mind. The two brothers, the two Palestinian brothers, who both showed up in a major way that weekend. But you guys understand what I'm saying. Let me know. Do you guys want to see more of those types of fights? I think it's fun, and it's all in a respectful manner. That you're representing your countries. You face off. This is something we used to see a lot more back in the day, especially on the kickboxing scene. They do this a lot over in the kickboxing scene over in Europe and whatnot, and over in Asia. So just bringing that up here once again. But the Palestinian Abdul Karim Al-Selwady, I think he's gonna have a tough night taking on George Hardwick. I think Hardwick is a UFC caliber fighter, only 26 years old. And this is another fighter that's going to come through Dana White's Contender Series. And I think he's going to have a name in the octagon. He's going to be around for a while. I think so. I like what I've seen from him. And George Hardwick opened up on Bovada as a -325 and is now a -345. Action coming in on him, even when he opened up so high there. And we could also take a look. Let's take a look at one more book. Let's take a look at Bet Online, where he opened up as a -550 and is now a 350. You see the extreme confidence, the action, where the action's going. You see where the confidence is. It's definitely on George Hardwick. I think he gets a finish in this fight. I think he gets a knockout. I think he uses his boxing skills to get a knockout here. It's a high line, and you guys know I've cautioned you guys about taking those types of high lines on Dana White's Contender Series, so not necessarily recommending it. But if you're looking for something and it comes down to that main event, I would caution you not to target the dog value in Abdul Karim, and I would actually say just settle down and throw George Hardwick in. That's the recommendation I would give you there. I feel more confident even at that high. George Hardwick. All right, guys. All right, so that's gonna wrap up Dana White's Contender Series Week 2. Obviously, we're looking for a much better night tomorrow night than we had last Tuesday. I promise you guys we will. All right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and you guys can expect me to break down every Dana White's Contender Series card all throughout this season. I appreciate you guys so much. Hit that like button on your way out. Signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.